by Councilor Brumman. All in favor? Carried. We have new business. We have the Silverton parking study. We'll turn it over to our CA.
Yeah, so this is the parking study that has been prepared by the consultants. I'd like to just emphasize that this is a study, not a plan. So it's sort of in their professional opinion, what have they seen on the ground? And they're summarizing that, they're giving some suggestions, but I don't want people to think that, you know, option 1 or option 2 is something that council is going to adopt steam ahead with.
Okay.
Those are just some options for discussion. One of the things that we realized that we needed was a documented plan, like something in writing, so that we could start having conversations with Ministry of Transportation. And so this is serving that purpose, but I think that any idea of like what is actually going to happen on the ground in Silverton, that's another phase of this project. This is really giving a snapshot of what there is and some of the context and constraints around that and around what we're seeing. So what can we do? What can we not do? Trying to give a little bit of the lay of the land and some of the options available for council's consideration, but I wouldn't consider it an exhaustive attempt to come up with a solution for Silverton. Because that I think is something that like there was no public consultation as part of this plan. Like it's a study in that sense that rather than a forward-facing plan. So the goal at this point is to make the document public so that it can form the foundation for some future discussions.
Okay, Councilor Mills.
Yeah, what kind of discussions do you foresee having with the Ministry of Transportation?
Well, there's been talks about crosswalks, which they've said, tell me more.
Yeah.
But so we're looking at what's possible there. Also, what we can do for on-street parking along the highway, not just on the east side, but on the west side of the highway in that commercial block where we've got residential properties there. And sort of sometimes people park there. Sometimes they respect the driveways of the residents and sometimes they don't. Like, how can we improve that? So I think that those are the main conversations.
There's probably nothing we can do on our own without like the orientation of the parking stalls are either on an angle or like this, right?
Yeah.
So we can't decide ourselves which orientation we want without their permission.
Exactly. Everything on Lake Avenue, from private property to private property, is the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Transportation and Transit, I think they're called. So if I call them MODI, it's just because that's what they were for a while. But
okay.
They change the name every couple of years anyhow.
Yeah.
Just call them highways.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that like the main goal is to get this document out into the light of day so that it's available for the public. And I'm sure there'll be comments coming in from interested parties with their feedback. I've already received some based on this being in the public agenda package. So that's going to come to a future meeting as comments come in. Depending on the nature of it, either it'll be sort of addressed by staff and held like on file until we get to something, or if it's a very specific request that's ready, then that will come to council. And council can at that point decide whether or not they want to consider the request or whether they want to wait until that second sort of phase of this project that would be the planning and the public engagement and trying to actually land on a solution for Silverton. You know, you may want to wait until you get to that point rather than considering one-offs, or you may decide that the request is so reasonable and so clear based on the information that you have that you're ready to make a decision sooner.
Any other questions?
So basically the increase in stalls would be the orientation of the parking. That's about it. And the majority of it is on Lake Street.
Yeah, I think that there were some other suggestions about like side street parking and where we might be able to, like we looked at putting some by the fire hall, just sort of south of the fire hall, but before the mailboxes stretch on the far side. I know there's some drainage issues there, so that's not a perfect solution. Most of these things are perfect solutions.
I just have a question, probably for you, on the layouts. It's just a question. Has nothing to do with you or your building, but it's in front of your building. In the layouts 1 and 2, there's a little spot in front of the general store. What is that?
What's that too?
There's no parking, there's no nothing. It's just a spot. Layout 1 or 2, 23. Parking spot.
Page 23.
Page 23. Oh,
I think it's
Page 19 on the bottom.
tree protection area space.
Okay, okay.
That's what's on the existing parking calculation on page 14.
Oh, yeah.
And there are a couple of those in that block.
Okay, I see the circles, I just wasn't sure what that one was, because it didn't really
Yeah.
have anything in there.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, that there's a tree that's planted in the highways right away.
Okay.
But recognizing that, yeah, you can only use the space one.
Yeah, very true, yeah. You can't cut a hole in the middle of it. Okay.
Apparently I should recuse myself from this discussion, right?
If there's, yeah, if
If it's specific to your building or the
Yeah.
business?
Yeah, so I would say you can't make any comments about anything that relates to downtown parking generally, or as it specifically relates to SBS. But these sort of clarification, this is public information, and so I don't think it's inappropriate for you to be in the room while that's happening.
Yeah, okay. So I'll just make this comment. I'm sure this, then I'll recuse myself. Just about the accuracy of the map. And that's a general comment that anybody could observe, not just me. There's a deciduous tree missing that does make a difference on one of those corners. And that's something that I could bring to somebody's attention at any point, but there's a nice, beautiful oak tree that's not on this map.
Where is it?
Right in the corner, in front of Hand and Soul, on the other side of Hand and Soul.
South end of the building.
Okay,
It's on
Okay.
village, it's on village property.
a good point.
Councilman, go ahead.
Now
Yeah.
I'll sit back at this point.
okay. So we're just sort of generally commenting on the parking study. Okay. The current situation, paragraph 2.1 downtown parking. Village of Silverton has a population of approximately 150 residents. I realize this is a study that somebody else did, but that was what sparked my communication with you today, which we have that was inaccurate and has been corrected, but it hasn't been corrected to the public yet.
Anywhere
apparently.
online, no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it is extremely misleading, and I think that we all should kind of go out of our way to make sure that people understand that that's not the case. We're not down 150 people.
It is a challenge because Statistics Canada doesn't update their data tables.
Yeah.
They have a separate page where they publish the updates.
Yeah,
And so it is really hard for the general public to
yeah, which is, one, now that we all have this,
Yeah.
the letter, we can take pains to make sure that people understand that.
Yeah, and when we get to the OCP, you'll see that the language in there is
Yes,
selected.
yeah.
It does address that.
What is the block function now?
83? Right, yeah.
Yes.
Councilman Swift.
The parking is illustrated in front of the hotel, Silverton, the old Silverton Hotel.
Yeah.
Again, that is Ministry of Transportation.
Yeah.
Where do you mean exactly?
The green area
Okay, let me look.
looks right beside the highway.
What stage are you?
Yes, so the one that's
19.
on the highway is Ministry of Transportation controlled.
Yeah.
The off-street loading that's just north of the hotel.
Yeah.
That's actually village owned.
Yeah. Oh.
There's 4 parcels in there. There's some notations on it, so it's not just a straight property that we can do what we will with it. But that is village owned property at this point with some limitations and restrictions that I'm not entirely familiar with.
mention
Yeah. I don't foresee any issues parking there.
No, but I get, again, like anything that we want to do on Lake Avenue, from private property line to private property line, we need to
Yeah.
do in consultation with Ministry of Transportation. And I will say that I had some conversations with them earlier this week, and they were incredibly helpful. And I'm looking forward to working with them
Good.
on some of these things. But I think that the first thing is we needed a map. We needed something that we could use to support communication between, because they've got a team of however many people
Yeah.
working on it, and we've got a team of people, and how do you have productive conversations without something as a starting point? So I think that that's the value that I see, particularly in this parking study, is helping us to further the discussion in a way that is clear to all parties, to make sure we're all on the same page when we're talking about things.
Currently, there's no agreement between Village of Silverton and Ministry for parking on the Ministry property.
Well,
It's informal
you
or
don't know,
unsaid?
because it goes back way back, right? Like,
1892?
yeah, so there may be some, maybe there is a letter from 1951 that's buried in an archive box down there, or that we have buried somewhere. And so that's part of the conversation that
Okay.
I had with them, is like, when do I need a permit, and
Yeah.
how do I go about doing that? And do you have anything on record, or do I need to have something on record? I was talking more about sidewalk maintenance.
Yeah.
And so what I learned is that when you get a permit for sidewalks, it's typically for installation and maintenance. So since these clearly got installed, we assume that there was a
Yeah.
permit. And we assume that it authorizes the continued maintenance of these sidewalks. But if council directed to extend a sidewalk, that would require a new permit from the ministry in order to do that.
Okay, well, I remember us talking about maybe installing planters, and signage to slow traffic down,
Yeah.
just to get them to,
We are not permitted to do that without the consent of the ministry.
okay.
Any questions, comments from council? This will be coming back to the table, so we can get a good look at it. All the public can get a good look at it. If you have any questions, maybe shoot some emails off to Catherine, and she gets some ideas. Great. Okay, then we'll move on to the OCP updates.
Okay, and Councillor Denbach, you are returning to the.
Come on in. Yeah. Who were you again?
We have the OCP update, and I will turn this over to.
I'm going to turn it over to Ian. I think, well, I'm going to say two things. First, we've got the summary of public consultation, which is, again, we could discuss it, but it's not going to change what's there. So that's really there for council's information, and to make that information available to the public. And then I think the place that we probably want to spend most of our evening tonight is on item D3, and I'm going to turn that to Ian as the lead on the OCP.
Before we go to that, I just want to say that I really appreciated the dog having been counted as attending the other nights. There's like 84 people on one dog.
That's a good turnout. Holy,
No, it was 50.
Well, 50 residents.
Oh, okay.
But even.
and a dog?
And a dog. Catherine, the dog.
Hi, Mayor Gordon, Council, thank you. We've come a long way since we started the project, and I last saw you in February. And of course, one of the important things we went through was the public consultation process. And I wasn't going to go through in too much detail what we heard, of course, unless you have any specific questions about it, other than to say we've sort of distilled that information that was in there, the feedback that we got, and tried to incorporate it as best we can into the OCP. And I think pretty much everything is in there. You may not see it explicitly in certain ways, but certainly in sort of subtle ways and indirectly, all of the input that we've heard is somehow in the new OCP. There's been a few changes, of course, since the last OCP was done back in 2010. There's a new focus on natural hazards and wildfire resiliency and those kinds of things has changed the picture quite a bit. And and of course, climate change is still top of mind as well. But now it isn't so much about how we prevent climate change as how we adapt to it. And that's where things like wildfire mitigation come in as well. But overwhelmingly, people love Silverton and they want to see it maintain its character that it has. And I think that the draft OCP we have does do that. And we'll have some questions for you as well, trying to get your feedback on, especially things about heritage protection and those kinds of initiatives and how important we want to emphasize them in there, and also how much regulation we may want to incorporate as well. So, okay.
We just lost video, but we're gonna get it back.
Just ask them, we just.
Yeah, and I think we can continue with the meeting while I butts around because it's.
So, in going through the OCP, I could put it on my screen and share it with you if you'd like to go that way, or we can just sort of talk along if you want to use a printed copy or follow on your own laptops. I'm not sure technologically what would be best, because I can put it on my screen and share it. And then you
Sure, let's do that because
Yeah.
that's gonna help the people that are attending remotely. We've got some public on there, and so this will
Okay.
make life easier.
sharing.
Is it letting you? Now it should be.
Yeah, screen. So it should be.
To do that.
How's that? Okay, that was
Okay, so you're just, or yeah, I said, oh, okay. I did split my screen.
So the first parts of the OCP talk about the general directions that we're going for and gets into the background of the village. Some of the information there we need to get updated. I'm not as familiar with Silverton as everybody around the table is, so really appreciate getting your input on that as well. And so you can email Catherine with any input that you have, suggestions that you want for wording, things that you think are missing or inaccurate. There were some carryovers from the old OCP that aren't really applicable anymore as well. But we start off with in recognition of Indigenous territory, and then an overview. We don't have key directions yet because that will be one of the last sections to come.
Yeah, so right off the bat, in first paragraph, the introduction, within the unceded lands that have been traversed for centuries by the Silts, Chinaha, and Sinixt, I would request that the Sinixt always be listed first, as they are the primary land claimants to this bill, and the other two nations are secondary. They traversed it in trade routes, but not as occupants, to the best of my knowledge.
So I have a little toolbar that's in my way here. Okay, now it's disappeared. All right. So the intent of the OCP is to guide the village over the next 20 years. And we want to incorporate in there as much as we can about the directions that we think the village is going to go in. And of course, things change over time as well. But the more we can put in there as far as the vision and things that we want to try over the next 20 years, the better. Because if we can put it into the OCP, even if it's something that we say we might do this or we're going to consider doing that, it opens the door to be able to do that in future. Whereas if it's excluded, you might run into a situation, or a future council might run into a situation where we actually have to amend the OCP to enable it. Because under provincial legislation and municipalities being creatures of the province, if it isn't set out by bylaw, the OCP is a bylaw, then you can't do it. And the OCP is like the top level bylaw, and everything else comes down from that. So I did want to draw attention to that. shall versus may, the permissive versus the mandatory. So if we say that we shall do something, then that means that, yes, we're going to do that and we're going to implement it and force it or whatever the case may be. If we say may do that, you just permission language, then it just opens the door as an option. It doesn't mean that it is actually in law at that point. So the first part of the intro just talks about some of that background and the overarching provincial legislation and how we go about revising the plan. There we go. The public process that we went through to update the plan. And that's a requirement of the legislation as well, is that we have to prove to the province that we've gone through a proper public consultation period. Then we get into the community vision and values. So if you want, you can look at this as kind of an upside down triangle where we're starting off very generally, and then the OCP gradually gets down into more and more specific areas to a point at the bottom. And also it ties in well with the zoning bylaw, which is another document that we're in the process of updating too. And you'll be seeing a draft of that either by the end of the month or early July. So community vision, so something that we can start off with right off the bat. Everybody still agrees with that community vision, wants to make any change to
No.
that? Okay.
I'll make a change, a suggestion. Silverton will be a vibrant, unique village in a transition from resource-based economy. We all know that metals prices are up. This place was settled by miners, and I think we should invite resource resurgence if possible in the wording somehow.
Mhm.
We are open for logging and mining to come back here. That's what built the town. That's why we're here. We've got little recognition to what the town, I don't know, the historical contents with the founders of Silverton and the Crown grants, say 160 acres they made Silverton out of. But let's not kid ourselves. We need to make money. Can't be a handout community. If we can invite and welcome resource companies, come here and start mines and logging again, let's do so. Responsibly, of course, and buy that. And also I do like where you're going with adapting to climate change, right? Because you can't change it. It is windier and rest of that. I like that direction too. But we've got lots of ore left here, I think, and it can be managed properly. I think that should be in our plan.
Okay.
I just caution that we're only allowed to talk about what's within municipal boundaries.
We are, but you mentioned Colleen McCrory with the Valhalla Park, which is across there. The Sinaiaks, I don't know where they settled here. Did they settle here? Where's the settlement? They traversed through here just like everybody else, but the settlers are the miners. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna talk about Valhalla Park and all around here, then we gotta include right there, a whole bunch of silver in that mountain right there. And there, and gold over there. No, I'm not kidding, really.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's more of the economic influence that that industry could potentially have on Silverton itself, even though we're not mining within Silverton.
we're not mining now, but let's not close the doors.
Yeah.
So let's be open and be welcoming.
Ideas.
Okay. And then getting into the guiding principles, thoughts there as well about what you see, maintaining the unique character and magic of Silverton, protecting the local environment, encourage local self-sufficiency, promote a resourceful and diverse economy. So I think that is a little bit on what you're mentioning. Support housing needs for the entire community. And that's another big reason we're updating the OCP, which we'll get into, is the whole housing push by the provincial government. Encourage services that add value to the community and let the public landscape reflect the heritage and historical spirit of the community, and make it safe and easy to get around. And if you have any thoughts even afterwards,
It's all good.
email Catherine's. All good. All right. Oops. And community character checklist. So in gray there, because that's still being worked on. I'm talking about the unique.
Just moved a little too fast for my brain here. So just back to point 6 in guiding principles.
Mhm.
And the word community is used a couple of times. What is that community? Is that Silverton, or is that the region, or
That's the community, so.
That's the community of Silverton. So support the housing needs of the entire community. There's nothing mentioned here then about the housing needs of in general. Like, what are the housing needs of this?
More broadly than
I
Silverton,
think so. I think so.
and how that might influence,
So
housing.
OCP is supposed to be directed to Silverton. We're not looking at everybody else. We're just looking at Silverton. We need to keep our thoughts to Silverton.
What about in a similar vein as what you were saying, Brian? An openness to supporting the housing needs in general.
I'm gonna say that you do need to think about how this applies within Silverton's municipal boundaries, because that's where you have jurisdiction. And the same way that you would appreciate New Denver or Area H telling you what to do within your boundaries, you probably want to refrain from telling them what to do in their boundaries. So just as that's the scope of the OCP. And so when Councillor Mills is saying we want to be open to business, what that means to me is that we would support an office related to. It doesn't mean that we're going to start drilling in Dewis Park, right? Well, maybe we are. I don't know, but I think that's
Just wait till I file my claim.
that's the lens that all of this needs to be seen through, is that we have limited jurisdiction and we need to, for the most part, like, we might let you just like sneak a little bit out when it's a general statement, but it really does need to focus on land use planning within the village of Silverton, not in the broader area. And maybe one day the regional district will make a regional growth strategy, and that would be great. And that's where those sort of regional comments would go.
Yeah, I always left that open to a wrong interpretation, which is what happened. Now, and let's say somebody wanted to build a 12-unit something here in town, and somebody might say, well, who here needs it in this community?
Oh, there's a housing needs, the housing needs report says that you need hundreds of them just in Silverton. Yeah.
Okay,
There's people who currently live in Silverton who are on the waiting list for Osprey. As an example.
okay. I'm just hearing an argument that says we don't need 20. Let's say it's 20. We don't need 20 units here in Silverton, so it doesn't fit the OCP.
Well, no, I think as we get into the residential housing section, you'll see that the housing needs do actually say you do need 20 units or possibly 200, but I mean, the practicality of that, yeah, so that's where we need to have a practical approach. But if somebody came along with a proposal for a multi-unit development, then the OCP as it currently is would actually enable that to be considered. Zoning might have to change for it, and we'd of course have to make sure that the servicing will all work and big enough septic field and that kind of thing. But there's nothing in the OCP as it is right now that nor can there be, because the province is mandating that we have to be open to having lots of building extra units.
John, do you have something to comment on? I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, I just don't like the idea that the government is saying we have to have all this. I don't want to see a 20-unit development in Silverton, like, big apartment kind of thing. Not because I'm not sympathetic to the housing needs. I love my town the way it was, more than how it is now, but I want to keep that idea. And you start put in one apartment building, well, if you fill it up, then geez, that pretty much justifies let's build another one. And I would like to stay away from that. And like I say, it's a lot of what the government's been doing, basically telling us we have to do. I don't like. I'm kind of one of those, it's my property, I do what I want within some respects, but anyway, that's, let's say, we need housing, but I don't like the way we're going around some of it.
Yeah. And the housing can take a lot of different forms as well. So when you think 20 units, you're thinking of a small apartment block or a condo or something, but it could be something different. It could be a strata with 20 small homes geared to seniors, and they're all on the same level, so that you're not talking high rise, because you can't even consider that here anyways, having high rise, because we don't have fire protection for it, for example. but there could be some form of 20-unit development that happens on a property. It's just being open to that, and that's where the zoning comes in, the next document, where we can actually start to specify what that form of that type of development would potentially take. All right. Next section is more background leading into details of the plan. So we have historical and geographical context, and I'm more than happy to hear your thoughts on that. Being residents of Silverton, and I'm the outsider from Caslow, so what do I know? So I know there've been already some feedback of inaccuracies or things to be enhanced in there. So we won't spend time on that right now, but you email comments on that so that we can incorporate your thoughts. Next is a contextual overview map of Silverton and the area, talking about the lake and its context here, natural areas of importance. And then we have a map showing the parks. We'll get into parks in a bit more detail later, but again, this is just talking about background of what, getting into what Silverton already has today. And then in 352, getting into some of the hazards that we have, being a small community located at the foot of big mountains. There are some hazards from waterways coming through our area, potential for flooding, steep slopes causing landslides and debris, and of course forest fire. So this map this highlights some of those potential hazards.
I have a quick question. So we just had the floodplain mapping. It's changed a little bit since the last time. It's changed a lot since the last time. I see in here that you're not allowed basements in flood. How does that work on houses and places that are already there? Say something happens to, I'm not in the floodplain, but say I was, something happened to my house, and now you're telling me I can't have a basement anymore? Is that how I'm reading it? Or can I rebuild my basement?
Under the current, so there's currently a floodplain bylaw. It's quite dated and needs to be revised because it has what I see as a pretty significant loophole in it. If it's new construction, you can't put a basement in it.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to renovate your house, basements are okay.
Oh, so if I had a house and wanted a renovation to put a basement in, I could do that.
Yes,
I could.
You could.
But if I had a
that is how
wanted
the
a basement,
bylaw is currently written, which to me doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm sure there was a good reason for the language that they chose at the time, but they basically put an exemption. Anything that's a reno is exempt from the provisions of the floodplain bylaw. And I think that was meant to allow houses that had been there for a long time to keep being what they were.
Yeah.
However, that's not the only interpretation that's available. So I think that that is something that we do need to tighten up, but that is, again, going to be, this is the vision, that's the nuts and bolts and the details of it in the floodplain bylaw. So hopefully we are going to be bringing, again, a floodplain bylaw before council prior to the election to finish up that work that got started.
Yeah. So the way it stands, so my basement over there, I can use that no matter what. Now, what if, let's say, you've got a house, and then you could, with that, could you call putting a basement under it a renovation?
Under renovation.
Let's keep that in there. Let's not change that one. No, I'm serious. I think that's so much of this where you got to put your house up on stilts and whatnot. To me, it should be okay if you're willing to take the chance. Then maybe you can't get flood insurance, but you can get all the rest. And considering with the diking and whatnot we've got, the chances are pretty slim. And I would be willing to take that kind of chance when I am down on part of that floodplain. So
I think that when we get to the floodplain bylaw, one of the big questions for council is what is the municipality's tolerance for risk? And are you wanting to put some municipal level constraints, or do you want to leave that for individual property owners? But let's stay on this OCP right now because we've got a lot to go.
Yes, and part of it too comes down to occupiable space. So if you have a basement that's for storage versus a basement that has, say, a suite in it with a bedroom where somebody might be sleeping, if there's a debris flood or something that comes through, those are two different things. And the village may or may not have a lot of jurisdiction over that as well because of come into the building code. So if you're getting a building permit, they may have restrictions on what type of usage you can have in a basement. Because that's where that flood construction level comes in as well. So the livable space has to be above that flood construction level. So the map on this page does show what's called the non-standard flooding erosion areas, and those are dating back to around 1990. But we do have the flood construction zone, which is from a more up-to-date flooding study that was just recently completed. We do need to get some input from the engineers about whether or not the old NSC FEA still applies now that they've done the more detailed floodplain study, because things like LIDAR and the technologies they use to measure topography weren't available at that time. So we'll try and get that feedback before we wrap up this draft. But if not, then we'll still be going in there with some flexibility if Start getting into the next page of some of the demographics. So we have the correct population there, 181 from the 2021 census, but a lot of the other information that's available from Statistics Canada or the community profile is based on the lower population. And because Stats Canada has to do rounding and can't report anything of less than 5, and in some cases 20, because they can't identify individuals, there's very limited information for a municipality the size of Silverton, especially when it comes to things like employment and that kind of thing, so different occupations. So it has to be more generalized. But interesting, on the next page here, we have how the population has declined but stabilized again. So reaching a peak in the mid-1990s and to where it is right now at 181. And hard to say if it will either stay that way or might go up. Certainly if the province has its way with the housing initiatives, we'll see more population for the next 20 years in Silverton, but probably not a doubling of the population given its historical trends.
But they want double the houses.
They want double the houses.
Yeah, figure it out.
Well, they want.
When we get to talking
Yep.
about that, I have a lot to say.
And I see most of my pages have plots.
Yeah. And it's not to say that we're going to have double the houses
Yeah.
in 20 years. It's just that it has to be enabled that if
I have issues with that too.
Well, but
Yeah.
bear in mind, your rules currently allow it.
Yeah.
We didn't have to change any rules to be able to meet the housing target.
I know, but it is a matter of coercion and commitment from the province with the housing study that Silverton Council did not actually ratify. And we did not vote in favor of that. It was
Say that.
subsumed from us.
Yeah.
And we had no choice, but Silverton Council at that time chose to not vote in favor of it because it absolutely, patently has nothing to do with the reality on the ground. And I think that something about that needs to be in the OCP.
I've sent some wording
Yeah.
to the CAO on this, so when we get to the housing bit, I'll bring that up.
Okay.
All right, so as noted, there are currently about 100 dwelling units in Silverton, and there'll be 340 something with the provincial targets met. So, yeah, but we'll get into that.
And you can't use as an excuse the fact that you don't have sewerage, you're all on septic.
There's that. Well, the sewerage is one of the limitations for sure.
Yeah.
But we'll get into that.
At the time when it first came out, they told us you can't make excuses for health considerations.
The subsequent legislation did provide
Yeah.
exemptions for,
That has been something. All right, we talk here about the economic drivers. So we do get into aggregate and mineral resources, recognizing that is still it's in the area, in the economy, and could be more so in the future.
Yeah, on 3.7 economic drivers, there's no mention of home-based businesses, of which there are quite a few in Silverton.
Okay.
So I just would like to see some mention of that.
I thought there was a mention of that.
There is later on in the document.
Okay, yeah.
All right, we get into 3.8 employment. Home-based businesses can certainly be mentioned there as well. And occupations, so that's more generalized from the Statistics Canada data. And then we get into heritage, parks and resources, cultural institutions, as it exists currently.
3.9, yeah.
3.9 is getting rewritten.
Okay,
Yeah.
because the church has been
The
decommissioned.
church has been decommissioned and there are a bunch of things in there that
Yeah.
are, that
Okay.
we flagged. My version already has scribbles on it.
Yeah. I gotta be careful about that. A lot of that was carried over from the
Okay.
doc. Transportation and servicing, we talked a lot about Highway 6 already, Highway 6 corridor and Ministry of Transportation. They have jurisdiction there. And then the roads outside of the village limits, also being under Ministry of Transportation or Forestry. And the village maintains, does maintain the sidewalks in the village core, and of course, all of the roads, other roads within the municipality.
I have a question on that one. This is operational direction. Should this be included? And should it be more, if it is, should be included, should it be more specific and say with the village of Silverton works with Modi? They are the sidewalks and,
No, so Modi will not do anything for our sidewalks. So any sidewalks we want are at our cost.
okay, so back to this, it's an operational direction, should it be in the OPP?
I think it's fair. I mean, it's a statement that says we maintain the sidewalks in Highway 6 in the commercial core. So I think that is, it's not providing specific direction to staff there. It's just saying, and it's not committing to a particular service level, which is, I think, the most important part. Like, it's not saying,
If there's an inch of snow out there, we have to get our guys down there, that's my concern.
no, absolutely not. I think that does stay with council as discretion about what the policy is going to be for that operational stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, but I think that it's entirely appropriate to just have that one statement in there, as long as it's not setting service levels or committing council to, or committing the village to any particular action. It can mean a lot of different things.
Okay.
Right, we also talk about transit that's available regionally. And I think we get into that again further on in the document. We're looking at alternative forms of transportation and how we can improve that. Then in servicing, we first talk about wastewater disposal. Interesting thing here that relates back to the housing initiative is that the Ministry of Health suggests 1/2 acre minimum for properties with septic fields. And a lot of the village properties already are much smaller than that. Village has well-drained soil, and so it works. But that's obviously a bit at odds with the idea that we can have a lot more housing if that's the minimum size. Water supply and distribution, there'll be a bit more information incorporated in that based on some feedback that I will get from Public Works, and Catherine's already pointed it out to me. And I know there's been a lot of work done on asset management as well up there. The village does not currently have a sanitary landfill, but there is one regionally. And then talking a bit about storm drainage, and again, we'll get more into that as an operational thing later in the document.
So I have a question again, so if we have other storm drainage setbacks already in place, why do we need an additional DPA for the rest of the lakefront and the riparian?
Probably best if we get into that in the case section. Yeah, then we can talk about the whole rationale about getting to ecological protection and that. All right, section 4 are our goals, objectives, and targets, and this is where we start making sure that we are aligned with yours and the community's goals in terms of what you want to see happen over the next 20 years. So that first section will be built on a bit more once the document is closer to being finalized. We talk about, again, more broadly, Silverton and its regional context and growth in the area, how energy and climate change are influencing the decisions that we want to make. And as noted there'll be some further work done on that section as well. I need to dive a bit more into greenhouse gas emissions and inventories, because that is a requirement that we include that in additional community as per legislation. And that's some of that information is available. And then we talk into the housing needs assessment, and we know there's no controversy there, so we'll just move right along. So this is just a very brief summary of the housing needs assessment, and we can get into that if you want to. But again, it might be better to wait until we get into the actual housing strategies and policies of the OCP.
I'm wondering if we should put, I sent my list off, Catherine, I don't know if she shared it with you, but if this is appropriate to put this Bill 44 applicability in there, just to explain that Silverton is exempt from this. But the reason why these are in our documents is because we're legislated to put it all in there. Would that be an appropriate spot for that, or?
It is, we can talk about that. The village is not totally exempt from the requirements. So it's exempt from having fourplexes as of right on residential properties. That's required in bigger centers, as well as transit-oriented development. So those are the two main ones that the village is exempt from. But the additional dwelling units and small houses, in addition to is something that does have from the housing legislation into our regulation. So it's not a full exemption, it's only a partial. It's, I believe, under 10,000 population. So it talks about 59 dwelling units needed by 2020. I've got to correct that date there. That's this date, 2026, and 208 by 2041. So I'll correct those dates to be 20-year time frame. And again, it's not to say that many houses will be built, but that there is, if you will, an opportunity that those houses can be built. So for example, if anybody wants to put a second dwelling unit, a secondary suite or a carriage house or something on their property, we would actually have hundreds of units potentially in the village. So it's about not restricting that, but that obviously the water system, for example, would limit the number of new houses that could actually.
Mr. May, go ahead.
Yeah, so
Deep ready.
regarding the carriage houses, which I am in favor of, we also have in our current zoning bylaw a restriction on the amount, on the percentage of lot coverage that can be had by buildings. And the reason for that is that we have no storm sewers. And so we're going to reach a maximum impermeable coverage that we can reach without putting the village at risk. So how do we handle that? Can we say anything about that? How can we address that? Because I think it's pretty important to say, oh yeah, we have to say that we would allow 208 new units when we can't.
That would probably be best addressed through zoning, because that's where you get into lot coverage and densities and those kinds of situations. If you put it, anything you put into the OCP, that's then sort of cast in stone, more or less. If you amend the OCP, then you have to go through a whole public process with a hearing and public consultations and so on. But if you keep things general in the OCP, and then you have your specifics in the zoning bylaw, then you can always update your zoning bylaw because it's in alignment with the OCP, and it's a much easier process to do that. So specifics like that are best left to zoning. But I also appreciate what you're getting at, which is if we have 300 homes that are all in septic fields in this small area, then that's a lot of septic waste that we know has to go somewhere. And how is that ultimately being handled? So that might be something to consider, is having some kind of study, if the province will fund that, about what is the maximum density of septic units could be.
And if storm runoff.
So
exactly.
there's nothing in the provincial regulations that would force council to allow more parcel coverage than we currently have. So you can, because the build up, right? If council says that we have to max out at 40% parcel coverage and you want a carriage house, well, that means you can't put it on your lawn. You have to build up, you have to build down, you have to get a bit more creative. So yeah, I think it's just good to know that that is not something that has been contemplated as something that the province wants to get their fingers into. So you have to say that it can be done. We do allow carriage houses. How that actually works in practice is a case by case, and there may be properties where it just doesn't.
Yeah.
Where they can't get enough sewer disposal on their property because it was an old lot and they built a large house with a tiny little septic or something, historical stuff happens. So there is still, we haven't lost autonomy to the province on that. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
That
Do
can
we
add,
need separate septic, if you have a carriage house? Is that separate?
You have to
Tie into,
You have to demonstrate capacity
oh,
in order
okay,
to get the
right.
building permit.
Makes sense,
So
yeah,
open to however you want to do that.
yeah.
Maybe you have capacity that you can tie into, maybe you need something new.
but it would have to be professionally assessed. You
Yeah.
can't just say that. You have to get an engineer or qualified person to look at it to make sure that the septic field has the capacity for an additional.
Yeah.
And that's handled at the building permit stage. We actually don't need that.
A journeyman plumber, can I certify my own?
All right, the other aspect of the housing needs assessment is the type of housing that is recommended or sought after. Market housing, which is just simply available at the market rate is, whatever the local market will support. So that's where you get into whatever the average selling price is, for example. And the 55 units should be affordable or below market housing. At that point, it's not necessarily subsidized housing, but housing that is built generally a bit smaller, more modest, that is below the average housing price, so to be more reachable and attainable for more people. And then 6 housing units to be deep. That's where you get into much more subsidized housing situations there. They get rental assistance.
There's a line here that says 21 consensus found that just 6% of households were renting in Silverton. Do you know how that compares to sort of the norm in other small communities or in general?
Rental is always a challenge in small communities, especially where there's a demand for short-term rentals. So there's it's the biggest need is rental housing, and there is a bit of talk about that in later in the plan too, trying to encourage a supply of rental houses. That's not really dealt with head-on by the legislation, but it's kind of implied that through that mix of housing types, that some of those would be rental available.
Do you know, for example, what Castle has percentage of housing rental?
Not offhand. I'd actually have to look up the stats on that. It's probably a little bit higher because I think it's rather low. 6% of households is an extremely low number. So it's probably a bit higher, but probably not that much higher. So probably getting to 10-12% housing.
Yeah.
And now we're getting into
Yeah, before we go to that, I realized I had neglected to ask a question under water supply. That it referenced the aquifer, Bartlett Creek, and a water license on Silverton Creek. Can you give me the details of the water license on Silverton Creek? Because my understanding was that we lost that license in the 1980s or 90s. And
I think it's still on. Is it not still on?
I don't know the answer to that. We said the water stuff we pretty much lifted from the old, so it is going to get a looking through
okay,
Terry because
I think I looked into this a while back when I was looking at something else, and there was still a water license on Silverton Creek, and I was told that they were holding that just in case of a one-off, in case of an emergency here that we had it.
it would
And
be
it
good
might
to
be
get
on there.
clarity on that.
And I don't think we have our other ones not come through yet.
no, we haven't. And so anything with water licensing seems to be taking years
Yes.
to flow through the system.
For some things, other things seem to be.
Was that a pun? Flow through the system?
Maybe.
Thank you.
yeah, once you have a water license, you don't want to lose it.
No.
Okay, Okay, now we're getting into the meat of the OCP and the directions we want to start taking over the next 20 years. The land use plan sets out broader terms than the zoning bylaw, the land use categories for, so we have residential, commercial, like institutional, parks and open space. And
There's a little bit of an error on that map. The Jehovah Hall is still shown here as the park. Park or open space.
oh, yeah,
And then on the other church too,
Yeah.
I know we've got some on the one side and some on the other, but there should be a little bit of peace in the open in the middle of, on Victoria, just off Victoria there too.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that Marna Victoria is one that I think I.
That's a weird one, yeah.
Yeah.
Happened to
I think
find
I
that
corrected
the
that.
other day. We actually own property up there and then it goes to the old church and then
Yeah, and
property of ours.
it's vertical, but
Well, it's a water line.
There's a water line through it. Yeah, that's why those two parcels
Yeah.
are vacant. Cause I looked at it and was like, oh my gosh, we own residential parcels. We could.
then.
And then I looked on the other map and I was like, no, we have water services running through there. That's how everybody gets their water. Don't mess with that.
Yeah, church wants to keep her water.
Yes, and that's actually one to look at too, since there are a couple of lots there that the village owns. Is that going to remain as a park destination, or would the village want to sell that parcel for potential residential development?
I don't think we can.
Yeah, I don't think we can because I think there's water runs through it.
Yeah,
It like leans through it.
and it's
So-
a hill like this that
Yeah.
Yeah.
nobody could afford to try to
Yeah, it
go
was
on.
there, so, okay, cool.
What lots are they, just what lots are they where the water mains run through on the hill?
You take this corner right there and go straight, and then just go straight up the hill, that's the one.
Yeah.
Right beside the church, the old church, goes straight up.
Where
the
the
hill.
compost is on.
You can get a
Yeah.
cursor on the map screen there.
I don't, can I peek around the corner?
Yeah, don't you see my cursor? It's just right here at Victoria. So the main section is
Each side, yeah,
Oh,
it's been consolidated, so it's a fat lot. And there's no houses on it. And you're like, why? That would be perfect.
Yeah.
I was wondered why there was a composter on there and I explained now why there's a compost.
Yeah, there's, village land. Those are actually lanes.
Yeah.
There, so it's an interesting little, there are a few irregularities in Silverton's sort of layout and mapping. Yeah, a few wonderfuls for sure.
Which number are we on here?
5.1.
Okay,
Shrink. And we're moving to the next page.
oh yeah, okay.
I just talked about still in permanent areas, and again, we'll get to that shortly. The residential section. So the housing strategy, of course, talks about meeting the needs of the housing needs assessment and providing houses across the housing spectrum to fulfill those needs. Again, it's going to be a lot of market influences as to whether or not some of these things will come true. And through zoning, that's where we'll be controlling things like the densities, setbacks, lot coverage, those kinds of details. So certainly look forward to getting council's input on that as well. Not seeing any major changes to those regulations as they currently are, other than that we do need to allow for secondary dwelling units wherever they are feasible. And that's where most of the units are going to come from.
I'm not quite sure where this fits into this housing thing. But say, for example, 25 years from now, Stuart Nelson's or Whitey's lots, just not for the general store, are completely vacant, not used for their present uses. And somebody wanted to put a 12-unit, let's just talk about Stuart Nelson's because he's right across the road from the park, from Dewey Park. Dewey Park?
Dewis.
Dewis Park?
Yeah.
Is there anything in this OCP that would prevent a consideration of putting the septic on Dewis Park? So it's not used for residential, but it's used.
Nothing here, but you've got some health regulations. So you would have to demonstrate, in order to get a building permit, you have to provide proof of septic. If you can figure out a way to make that work, there's nothing in this that would stop you. But my understanding is that you're no longer allowed to have septic disposal on a property that you don't own unless it is owned by a municipality.
Right, so
because there've been too many situations where people have tried to cash in and sell their septic systems.
in this case, I just want to be clear that we're not excluding this and calling it park. As Duas Park is a park and it's owned by the village. Could the village, is there anything precluding the village from saying, yes, you can use this as your septic field for the 12-unit development that's across the highway?
Provincial regulations won't let you do that
Why is it?
because you have to have your septic disposal on the same parcel as your construction unless the entire septic system is owned by the municipality.
So we have some of that in the village already where the septic is down the block, right?
They used to do that and they don't do that anymore.
When did that change?
At least 20 years ago, because since I've been in local government, that has been the rule. So when New Denver New Denver has a specified sewer area behind some of the buildings on Main Street because those are old historic buildings. There was not sufficient capacity for each of them to put their own fields in. So actually New Denver owns a sewage system that is on the lots kind of behind Raven's Nest and in there that those guys feed into, and they pay a separate parcel tax in order to do that. So that is typically the mechanism. And I think it's not a preferred mechanism for a lot of reasons, but that's kind of the workaround on that. I think that if you were going to do something like that, there are some real questions, like, because there's currently irrigation in Duas Park. So putting a septic field there would change things significantly. I would argue that unless, when you get to your zoning, unless under parks and open space, you put as a permitted use septic disposal fields from other people, you probably couldn't do that without amending your OCP, because that would be something that would, as a general member of the public, I wouldn't expect that in a park.
Yeah.
You know, like that. But if that's the will of council of the future, then you amend.
Yeah. So it's very
Totally
specific
different.
and it would be a request at that time.
Yeah.
Switch some up.
And you'd have to get permission from highways to go into the highway.
And you'd have to get Ministry of Health permission for,
Yeah.
I think, for the septic disposal, because I don't know, maybe a on-site registered wastewater practitioner would be able to do that, but my sense is that their guidelines require on-site disposal unless there is provincial authority for something different.
We have so much public space and so little space for housing. And I was just thinking, is there a way of using some of that space to allow for more housing by putting all this massive septic requirements on public land somehow?
We'll wait for the request to come in.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right, so policies for the housing spectrums, allowing different types of housing to the best can. Regulating the residential zoning, residential density through zoning is one of the key things there. So any thoughts that you have on any specific policies as we go through? I won't talk to them individually, but if you want me to stop or have any questions about any of the policies that you see, please do.
Regulate short-term rentals through zoning and licensing. Do we do this already? Is this something we do already?
We fill out the form every year that the province sends us that says that we do, and we say we require a business license, and it has to be in a residential property, but we don't deny business licenses for that because that's not a prohibited use.
And am I correct or incorrect in recalling that the B&Bs are supposed to have the owner living on the property?
It depends on zoning. That's usually a zoning regulation. So the province has used their own licensing scheme where primary residences can be used as short-term rental if it's a primary residence for most of the year. So the owner actually lives in the building most of the year, but they rent it out for say 5 or 6 months But so that's one of the restrictions they have, so it doesn't take away from the rental stock. And then the other would be like a B and B, where the owner actually lives in the house and rents out rooms or suite.
No, I would like to get, it doesn't have to be right this second, but I would like to get clarity on that because
Yeah.
it seems to me that we're not.
A residential property shall only be rented out by an owner of the property under vacation rental units in the current zoning.
Could you read that again?
You're asking if they stayed at the same time to operate the B and B?
But I guess the wording doesn't require that.
I think what it means is that if you are a tenant, so if you have rented your home, if you have rented a home from Councillor Denbach, you cannot then turn around and Airbnb it. You could Airbnb it, but you could not. That makes sense. But sorry.
We're looking at this in CAS though as well, and essentially along the lines of two different types of rentals. So one is where you rent the entire house as a short-term rental, and it has to be somebody's primary residence. And then the alternative is where you're just renting out rooms or a suite in a house that you live in. And that could also be a secondary suite or a carriage house. So those are the two main differentiations that would be handled through zoning.
Okay.
Yeah, so do give some thought to what you do and don't want in terms of a whole bunch of scenarios, because, you know, it is really challenging to write policy that captures everything you want and excludes everything you don't want. So the more specific cases that we can hear from council, the more likely it is that we're going to craft some policy that's actually going to meet most of the cases and give the results that you're expecting, rather than having like some weird loopholes or something like that none of us have contemplated.
Yeah, I thank you.
I have one more quick question on the regulate short-term rentals through zoning. Are you saying like only certain areas can have short-term rentals? Because I don't agree with that. I think this needs to be, we can't tell people what they need to do on their property. This needs to be, if you want one on your property, you need to lift that cap.
Yeah, so the zoning would be through residential zoning. So that would essentially be for the whole village, unless council wants to do something different and create, you know, certain tourism areas, for example. It would apply to R1 zone.
Does Silverton Hotel have a business license to rent out?
No.
Are they right?
Silverton Hotel is allowed one caretaker. They are not operating as a hotel. They have been.
About Airbnb or?
No. They can't be used for anything. They cannot operate, but they are allowed to have a caretaker on site.
Fair enough.
Which we all know they're doing more than that.
I don't. I have asked and I have been told by the caretaker that there is one person living in there. So until I get somebody giving me information to the contrary, that's what I'm going with.
Yeah, so officially you don't.
We all
say the same name.
And of course now the caretaker is deceased, so
Huh?
Lance,
Oh,
that's right. Month ago or two.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I expect that he was pretty sick for a long time. So I think there's still people living. I think there's still.
The owners in town.
So perhaps that's why they're caretaking.
Do they have a business license?
No, because they're not allowed to operate as a business.
So this is another one of these one-off questions.
Yeah.
Boarding house.
Mhm.
Let's say the Silverton Hotel was useful and was sold to somebody who wanted to make it into a boarding house. Is there anything in these, is that residential or what would that be considered?
That would be short-term as well. It would be probably transient accommodation, so a hotel business, and that would be a commercial operation then, as opposed to something that you'd operate out of a residence.
So commercial as if it was a hotel, I'm thinking more boarding house as in it's more like a rental situation.
Mhm.
It's not short, is every rental considered short term?
No, typically, long-term rental would be 6 months or more, for example. So I think it comes down to what the rental tenure is. So if they're renting by the week, by the month, as opposed to they've got a 6-month or 1-year lease, that'd be kind of the differentiation there between transient versus long-term.
And those definitions happen in the zoning bylaw. And so what the goal of the official community plan is, the OCP is trying to sort of say, here's the umbrella of everything that might conceivably be possible. And then your zoning says, but for right now, we're saying only this. And then you can adjust your zoning. And it's much easier to adjust your zoning than it is to adjust your official community plan. So when you're writing your OCP, you want something nice and broad. When you get to your zoning, you want to be as specific as you possibly can. And if you realize partway down the road that there's something new that you hadn't contemplated, then you amend your zoning to include that, and that's the will of council.
Yeah, something else we may want to think about too, along the lines of a boarding house would be housing or a business. Let's say staff accommodations, yes, so that be considered a residential area, or would that be restricted to commercial? Might be the kinds of things to consider what would be beneficial. Or even if mining started again, or and a camp was brought in, I don't think you'd have a camp in village necessarily, but there might be some manager housing, that kind of thing. Have a bunch of people.
The hotel.
Yeah.
Hotel.
Yeah. Where they wouldn't have a suite, they just have a room and a common area kind of thing. So.
Yeah, so if the sense from council is that you're pretty open to things and you don't want to be overly restrictive, then we can produce zoning to that effect. So give some thought to that, and feel free to send your comments in and sort of say either there are things that you do really want to make sure they get included, or things that just strike you as inappropriate for Silverton that you wouldn't want to see here. And we'll take all of that input and see if there is alignment on council. And if not, then we'll be coming back with choices that are going to have to be made.
Moving on, the housing types. Recognizes that single detached housing is the predominant form of housing. That's not going to change. But we do have to have policies that encourage alternative types of housing as well. And the biggest one will be additional dwelling units, which will be secondary suites, either within existing single family dwellings or as an addition, or carriage houses, which is a separate house on the same property that could also be over top of a garage, for example. The ADUs is where the greatest potential for meeting the housing needs are, whether that be just a few dwelling units or the potential for 200. It is the most flexible type. And then small scale multi-unit housing, 3 to 10 dwelling units. And so this would obviously have for minimum lot size that would need to be met, and on-site septic and those kinds of things. And ideally be long-term rental or strata to meet those needs.
What's just, this is 5-year OCP, isn't it? So is it 20? It's 20?
20 years, yeah.
But you're supposed to revisit it every 5.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But you're supposed to have a vision that exceeds, because as we can see, sometimes we don't get around to it.
I think this is more than just a hypothetical. I think it may be not necessarily true that single family housing is for the foreseeable future anymore. That may not be the case. We're finding out that it's not working very well. It's not providing housing needs, falling way short of that, and it's super expensive. Most people can't afford it. And maybe, in fact, 20 years from now, we'll be building 4 plexes all over, or 6 plexes, or 12 plexes all over the place, because that's the only way people can afford it. We can accommodate housing, population growth, and so on. So I wonder if we need to just maybe shift that language or include some kind of acknowledgement of that.
You've currently got 148 dwelling units. I think it's going to be the majority, or single family dwellings. So I think it's going to be the majority for quite a while, because even if you manage to get 100 units in multi-unit stuff, single family dwellings is still going to be your.
Yeah. I forgot there's a couple things going on there. One is water supply, of course, and one is it's both limited water supply and limited septic.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're never going to get that kind of density here.
Yeah. And that's really where the additional housing unit comes in. So you have your single family home, and they want to convert it into a duplex. So 2 units, that's the kind of thing that would most likely be accommodated. When we get into the next page, the small scale multi-unit housing, that's where it gets a bit more complicated, and you need to have a larger lot and make sure the servicing is available for it. So in the zoning and due to the provincial legislation as of right, we have to be able to allow those additional dwelling units, secondary suites and whatnot. But then we can have a different zoning category for where it's appropriate to have multi-unit housing or specify a minimum lot size of the requirements. And then the last category is seniors and special needs housing. And that also speaks to single family homes are less and less effective for the growing senior population. They look to move into smaller units or kind of shave off a piece of the house for themselves and rent out the rest. And that's where that different category comes in there. And also recognizing things like allowing for a caregiver to live on site or another family member that will take care of the senior or person with needs. All right. Next, we have commercial development, and this is largely focused on Lake Avenue, of course, the Highway 6 corridor, and maintaining the businesses that we have, encouraging new businesses to set up base businesses. Any thoughts on the policies that are outlined in that section?
I do. Sorry. Number one, work towards strengthening and diversifying the economy of the village and the Slocan Valley by encouraging new investment. I'm wondering how specific we have to be with the Slocan Valley, because if there's projects we want to join with the cusp in, should we maybe say Slocan Valley and the cusp because we got north and south, or just leave Slocan Valley out and say the area? Yeah, the area.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked a bit about that too, and removing the language for the Economic Development Commission because that's sort of defunct.
Yeah, just to sort of say like regional economic development initiatives
Yeah.
rather than naming the specific commission.
Yeah, because you never know that Slocan Valley might.
Maybe it's gonna be a
dissolve and
partnership.
something might change.
Yeah.
Partner with Castle.
Yeah.
So,
And got the message from the mayor about year-round tourism.
Yes.
Like that.
Yes. Number 4, can we add year round?
Yeah.
mhm.
That certainly makes sense.
Oh, okay, I'll ask the question.
Hmm.
The data centers, this really shocked me seeing it in there. I'm all for it, but was it something somebody said or just something that we're just automatically putting in the OCPs just to be on the safe side?
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up as a item for discussion because we've now seen this this is a brand new thing.
Yeah.
Like, even when we were doing the public consultation a couple months ago, nobody had this.
Yeah, it's nice.
But now it's down in Christina.
And it's in the news all the time, so people,
So
yeah.
yeah, so putting something in there that had that off is important, and I think everybody around the table should to think about, is that what you want to see in there? It puts a curb on it. It talks about the village's capacity and to be able to support that, right? And so if it's going to take away your internet bandwidth, eat it all up and eat up all your available water and your power, then it's not a good thing. So
Well, I'm pretty sure people here, we're putting a data center in and we're treating your water now because they're taking it off.
yeah,
I'm pretty sure people want the data center, we're gonna want the water.
right.
We're gonna be hung up here.
Yeah, I take the water. But another thing, like I saw NVIDIA, the big chip company,
Yeah.
they'll give you a big server to put in your house as one of these.
It's a problem.
As a bride.
Yeah, right.
This is-
That's decentralized,
Yeah, and they'll pay.
decentralized data centers.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
they'll pay you to have it, like they pay for your power, not just because it's like, you can have these things all over the place instead of centralized, and then you don't need all the cooling and heating, but you get a bunch of these, and it's gonna eat up your internet and eat up your power as well. Just by the number of them, so, yeah, all kinds of things.
It's interesting to take a look at that, but what are the
Oh,
unintended consequences?
Yes, so again, having the wording in there allows, if a year from now you realize it needs to be regulated, well, it's in your OCP to say that you can regulate it, and you don't need to open this document up again.
Number 7, and this probably speaks more to the zoning, encourage home-based businesses through zoning and licensing. I know last time that we did the zoning, we looked at the zoning. Previously, home-based businesses had to be within the primary building, and we expanded it to allow it in an outbuilding. I would like to see it also expanded to be on the property, so that, as an example, Madeline used to raise flowers for sale, which technically was outside of what we allowed. But I would like for people to be able to sell garden produce. So I'd like the zoning to accommodate that.
Well, that brings up an interesting topic too about urban agriculture.
Yes.
Because if somebody can prove to VC assessment that they can generate over $5,000 a year in income from their garden, selling fruits and vegetables, then they can have their property declared a
A
farm.
farm.
And they still would pay,
In town?
even in town, yeah. We had this happen in Castle. So their house, their structures are still residential or whatever that tax category is, but the land
The land
is
is assessed differently.
assessed at a fraction of
Yeah.
the assessment of a regular house. So
Speaking of unintended consequences.
it is, yes.
They pair wine and sold it for like $1,000 a bottle.
Only if you grew the pears on your property.
Got a pear tree.
I got it.
Wish my chestnuts were worth something.
The value on it.
All right, anything else on commercial? Think of those thoughts.
No, I think you pretty much touched
Limiting lakefront
most of
amenities.
my
was
work
another.
comments.
Improving waterfront amenities. And
Yes, I'm very happy to see that on there.
that allows the village to, as well, to pursue funding opportunities as well for that by having the OCP.
Great.
Environment, climate, and natural hazards. So these are all kind of interrelated themes, even though sometimes they can seem quite different. We talked about climate change, and it's not as climate change anymore, it's adapting to the changing climate. A lot of things that are out of control at the local level in terms of controlling climate change. So we have to be able to adapt to what's going on around us. And that a lot of that comes through education and getting people to act appropriately. So
It's like we've decided to just accept all of this and take no blame for the fact that we've created so much of it. Everybody says adapt, but why not try to change some of it? I know this isn't local, but I honestly believe that we change a whole lot of it if we got rid of the dams on the big rivers. I wish we would quit giving up on things and just saying that it's acceptable for our planet to be going to hell. And we'll just find a way to live in a bubble or something, because we need to start fighting back instead of just trying to adapt to it. And I honestly believe there's ways we can.
yeah, I think that's a great point. And something you could consider putting in here, if the council feels that way, is that the village would advocate for better climate, environmental protections and that kind of thing. So maybe put some thought into some wording that you want to see in there, or an aspirational thing, even though it's, as you say, it's outside the village and we're looking at what we can do in the village, which is adapt.
Yeah.
Beyond that, we can still push for some of the other initiatives. Any other thoughts on climate, adaptation, change, mitigation?
Just 8.3 when we get there.
Okay,
The first 8.3, we got two of them.
right. So we had built environment first. Any thoughts there on? We haven't gotten into too much detail about the unique character of the village and whether or not we want to have urban design guidelines. We'll get into that when we get into the DPA a bit more, I think, but right now it's fairly general. 8.3.
8.39
8.39.
encourage the province to require rehabilitation and reclamation of resource extraction sites.
Yeah.
Two questions. What do you have that's not unresolved within our borders? And I know of one property that's not resolved. And I personally tried to help out years ago, the NDP, to try and remediate the site at Deer Mill, and I got stonewalled, and it's still up for remediation. Anyway, inside the village, what is there that's left to do?
I'm actually not aware of any specific
I'm
sites.
not sure if there is anything or if this is a general. We know that there are historic mining operations that haven't been cleared up and are potentially leaching things into the river and into the lake. And so I think that the intention is to say, hey, province, please don't let any new resource extraction activities happen that are going to have a negative impact on the environment And if we're gonna start talking about that, let's make sure that there are enough measures in place for future. That's my guess.
There's already that. We have provincial and federal rules
Well, except they.
as far as the minor.
You don't have to
Clean
clean
up,
up,
yeah,
you
you
don't
do.
have to clean up if it's still being monitored, right?
If it's still being monitored, you have to remediate it or fix it up. If there's an issue, but we're talking historical and new sites.
Historical.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the rules for the new stuff
Yeah, this
is fine.
very tough.
It's,
If we don't have any sites here in Silverton, is it worth even having that in there, or should we remove that?
I think it's because of the creek. That would be my guess, because I think this wasn't new.
It was a carryover.
That was carried over, so I'm just trying to guess at what the intention of previous, and my guess is it's targeted at historic things.
It wouldn't be the north end of the town?
I don't know.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's just what I was thinking.
Yeah, the northern of the town, even Red Mountain Road, the creek, are really good examples of things that happen outside of Silverton, but that have potential devastating consequences for Silverton, just like we're on a steep slope, floodplain. There are things that happen outside of our boundaries that we do have to be cognizant of in a different way than trying to,
Yeah, it's basically the broader environment and climate change issues as well, and to what level does the village want to advocate for those kinds of things? Again, you can't really do anything directly, but it's an advocacy component that.
And there might be something kind of parallel to that gets added into the one below, the wildfire resiliency, that sort of encourages the province to take measures in the surrounding area that reduce Silverton's wildfire risk, right? That idea that, as you said, we are not immune from things, activities outside of our boundaries. And so we can't tell anybody what to do, but we could ask really nicely or make a suggestion, right?
Next, we have the wildfire resiliency. And any thoughts on the fire adaptive community approach?
On number 2, I would like to see major renovation, not just renovation. Just because we have people that replace their roof and their siding and their windows and the doors, and I don't want them to think that they have to go through this.
Yeah, the trigger would be if a building permit is required. And that's typically not required if you're just replacing shingles and doing cosmetic work. But that's something that we can have further discussion on as well as we get into the DPA section.
This might be just for the more towards the DPA end of it all. I fear you start pushing for this development, wildfire development permit area. What changes is this going to make to the insurance companies, and how much are they going to come down on us because of that? That's a big thing for our town here. There's a lot of houses that do not have insurance. That's for various reasons. If you're going down this, we're just pushing the insurance companies to make us do this. And this is, it's coming. I know it's coming, but I know there's a lot of pushback and backlash on it right now. So I'm wondering if maybe this, I don't know, wording should be different, or I don't know. I actually personally do not like the idea of forcing people having fire smart because of the fact that it's.
Yeah, I think that I hear you there. It was interesting reading the public feedback, because it's definitely, this was the one area where the responses tilted a little bit more towards more regulation.
But on that side, if you tell people,
But they don't necessarily understand what it means.
that's what I was gonna say. They just had a wildfire, so everybody's got the wildfire at the top of their mind. So they're thinking, yes, I want to do everything we can, and we want the village to do everything we can. But they're not thinking of the implications down the road. That, yeah, you want this, but now you have to pay X number in insurance costs because
you didn't.
Yeah.
Ian can probably speak to how Caslow has approached this, which is possibly a model that would be appropriate for Silverton.
Yeah, Caslo approached it more as an educational tool. So it's not meant to be prescriptive. So if you have come to the village with your development plan and get a building permit, then you go through the wildfire DPA process. And we encourage people to get a fire smart home assessment to educate themselves as to good building materials to use and appropriate landscaping. But if they still want to go ahead and build their house with cedar shake shingles or siding or something, they're free to do that. It's just that the village has done its part to educate them and to try to reduce our risk and liability. And by pointing that out to them, the village has kind of reduced its own liability too in that situation, because now the homeowner has taken response for the decisions that they make. It's not prohibited them to do it; they can go ahead, but it's meant to draw their attention to it. So it's not prohibitive like some DPAs or development permits are, where if you're not approved, then you can't do it. It's just that if you've given the information, do with it as you will, and hopefully meet compliance. And it's not it is not a DPA that goes on title, because it's really just kind of a moment in time where you look at that property as it's going to be proceeding with that development, and whether or not any mitigation steps have been taken or could be taken.
So it's forced education.
Yeah.
But it's not forced compliance.
And there are different approaches we can take too, and this is certainly up to council's discretion to proceed with the wildfire DPA. It could be strictly educational, so that if somebody applies for a building permit, that we just give them the information about the fire smart home assessment and don't force them to do anything at that point with it. But this is kind of the middle ground where they're not being forced to do anything, but we do want them to at least get some information.
Okay. And number 7 in that list, sprinkler systems to protect municipal infrastructure and heritage assets. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it shouldn't be considered, but implement.
I think we do have sprinkler systems in all of ours now, do we not? Maybe not in the arena.
Not in here.
Oh.
And not in the arena. Fire hall, yes, I believe so. Memorial Hall gallery.
Our water
I can
system?
say for sure on the fire hall. I was just in there, but I don't remember.
Our reservoirs. And I know there's some valves and exposed valves and stuff up there.
Yeah, they're metal though. For the valves, like, I don't know what, like.
Yeah.
Typically fire suppression systems, those sprinklers are only inside buildings.
Okay,
That's
so
our biggest
Fort
mistake.
McMurray,
What you're thinking was something totally different.
and I toured there just 2 years after their fires.
Yeah.
And they said they put the majority of their municipal fire trucks and fire response units headed immediately for their water system, formed a semicircle facing outward, pumping from the river, protecting their water system. So that's the kind of thing I'm thinking of.
Yeah, our water system is underground and then in pumps and then in pipes. So like, because
And then
if
above
we,
ground
well, I think
reservoirs.
it's different because we can pipe directly into the distribution system. And I think the difference is we don't have treatment.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I'll talk to Terry about it and see what his thoughts are. But my sense is that, not that I want this to happen, but honestly, if we lost the tanks, it would not be the end of the world, because the wells could feed into the distribution system. We might have some problems with surge capacity. If everybody turns their stuff on at once, we might have problems with that, because I have to put the volumes that those can pump. But I think that when we were doing a little bit of business continuity planning early discussions, we did talk about actually losing the reservoirs is not nearly as bad as losing the pumps.
Okay.
Losing the pumps is a real problem.
Good to know.
Yeah.
So we have to protect the pump houses.
We believe them again, we just replaced them.
The trouble with wildfire, sprinklers inside the building isn't going to save the building.
No, it's not.
Yeah, that's why I have a sprinkler on top of my.
Well, we have a huge water system right here. I believe that we should have towers around town with great big sprinklers. as long as you're not shooting up underneath, it's not gonna hurt the roofs and whatnot.
The CAO talked
So-
this one.
I am not a wildfire mitigation specialist, but Karina did attend the Fire Smart conference this year while she was still working for the village. And the information she brought back is that rooftop sprinklers are no longer considered a best practice for a couple of different reasons. One, it likely voids your insurance.
Why?
Because you didn't have, because that's what insurance companies do, is they look for ways to not pay you.
Well,
Uh,
Risk of water damage
Water
caused by
damage,
the sprinkler system if it's not set up properly, because it sprays towards your house and gets up into the soffits and it gets up.
If you have a
Okay.
professional company to do it, then it would be covered, but it.
but that's not the kind of sprinklers I'm talking about. If you've got a sprinkler on a tower that shoots like 150 feet every direction.
Yeah.
It's like rain coming down on your roof.
I hear you. However, you should check with your insurer before you do that, because you wouldn't want, like, there are reasons that insurance doesn't pay out that don't really make sense to me. And so just because that doesn't make sense, I wouldn't guarantee that I'm gonna get a payout from my insurance. I would check with my insurer, because there are different policies and it's something that they are starting to talk about more. The other piece is that we have to be really careful about maintaining fire flows. Because if you have decided to put a rooftop sprinkler on your house and you've turned that on and it's not authorized under our water bylaw, and the fire department responds to somebody else's house and they connect their hose to the hydrant, and all of the rooftop sprinklers have taken so much water out of the pipe that there is not fire flow available, the person who lost their house is going to sue you.
That's why we
And
don't
possibly
look it into
village.
that same system. That's why we keep it a separate
I
system.
see what you're saying.
We've got that huge supply right there. And if we were to have sprinklers that would, and it wouldn't take a huge number of them, have them on the outskirts and have them around town and limit the number of trees we have, clumps of trees and whatnot to help it a bit. We've got, I know it would all be expensive, but maybe if we propose to the government, look, here's an experiment, because how many villages, cities, whatever, are right on the edge of huge water systems? So maybe we being so small would make a good test system or whatever. I think we need to look at this kind of thing, because a wildfire coming in is gonna kill us.
For pages to go through, and this isn't really part of the OCP bit of it, so. This is something that I know you're passionate about, and it's a good project that maybe you can bring back to the council table to have a discussion on, but it's not something for the OCP. You wanna put up towers and sprinklers around town, and I get that, but it's not something we gotta add to the OCP. I'm just trying to rush everybody, we're at 15 minutes left and we still have 20 pages to go, so.
Okay, so the next section is infrastructure. We talked about asset management and building a culture of asset management in the village, doing a better job of maintaining things and forecasting when things are coming to their life and need to be replaced, so that we can do long range budget forecasting. So we're talking about all of those aspects and getting the best use we can out of our current infrastructure. Is there any thoughts there?
So what's happening provincially about development cost charges? I know they were talking about prohibiting municipalities from implementing DCCs because that would slow down development. And the feds were also talking about that, and
They've been
Still
talking
pushing.
about it, but certainly as it is, the village could implement DCCs.
Okay.
And that's really the only tool that a municipality has to
Yeah.
proactively build up money for
Yeah.
new infrastructure, because usually it's difficult to get grant funding to expand water systems or sewer systems. So, yeah, I don't think.
okay.
It's kind of cross purposes. I think what they were talking about was excessive DCCs, or for things like amenities that aren't directly related to infrastructure that they're trying to curb.
Okay.
But as it is, the current legislation, the housing legislation actually encourages DCCs and amenity cost charges to be considered by municipalities. There was a note there about, under infrastructure, is that the correct?
Oh,
one?
yeah.
Potentially, where are we here?
Do I have a question on that?
9.2.
9.1, I'm good. Number 8, I'm good. It says fully funded and I'm happy about that.
Yes, yeah, that was the one. Yes, considering the province really wants a lot of houses built, we need a sewer system and,
And a place
only
to
the
put it.
province, only had a place to put it, and only the province can pay for that because the village isn't gonna be able to afford a $5 million sewer system on its own. All right. Water supply and on-site systems, waste management. There,
So
Waste
water
management.
system one, I only had the one thing. Can we add if fully funded by the province to number 1?
So I'm gonna say, no, probably not, because the province has indicated that expansion should be user pay. So that whoever is benefiting from or whoever needs the system to be expanded should pay.
So my thoughts in this is if they want us to put another 200 houses in and they want us to upgrade our water system for these 200 people, this is their doing it with the 200 houses, so no.
No, that would come back to the DCCs, so it's like we need to figure out what the cost of the upgrades are, and then we need to apportion that to the new residents who would benefit from it.
Who then will not be able to afford to.
Yeah.
as it is, it's a natural development cap that the village has because the water system only has so much capacity right now, so if you hit that, you can't pull.
I apologize, but I have to use the washroom.
There's no harm in putting it in, but just because who knows whether the rules are gonna change, but the line from the province has been that you can get grant funding to improve water quality. But you can't get grant funding to provide water to more people because that growth should be user pay.
Yeah, we can get away with that wording on the sewer system because we don't have one already, so it'd be building a brand new one. But water system, since you already have one, it would be an incremental expansion, and that's what they're being less willing to cover. All right, waste management. I'm gonna make a few changes there based on information that Catherine's given.
Yeah, just a comment on number 1. Enough with the tipping fee increases from RDCK. It's probably over 24% in the last few years. It's enough. Gotta manage it way better. I don't know how we can help, but
They have to stop.
every year.
Coming up in the RD in the next couple of years, so give your
I'll
input.
come to your meeting.
Give your input.
It's a citizen. Okay.
On to transportation. So we talked a bit about traffic calming to get traffic to slow down on the major highway. Maybe you get visitors to stop and pause a while. And I'll be working with the ministry to do that. We do have improve and extend the sidewalks along the Highway 6 corridor, as we discussed earlier, with the approach to be able to pursue funding for that and get permission from the ministry.
That's the Highway 6 corridor north too?
Yeah, both sides of the river, yes. Yep. Under active transportation, so again, this is encouraging other types of transportation like walking and bicycling to create a safe environment for that. There was a suggestion about 30-kilometer-hour speed limit. I know that the current is 40 kilometers an hour, but many municipalities are considering 30 because that is closer to bicycling speed and electric carts and that kind of thing that seniors might use these days. So it creates a bit more equity on the side streets. It wouldn't affect the highway because the province has jurisdiction over the speed on the highway. But a blanket 30-kilometer-an-hour could be considered, but that's certainly up to council. It doesn't have to be in there if you feel the 40 is adequate, or we could just replace that with 40 if you
I
want.
thought we had 30.
It's 40.
Oh, okay.
My only concern with that is we don't have people to enforce the 40, so, or if lowering it to 30, we don't have people to enforce the 40, so is that gonna?
Is it true that RCMP can't enforce the 30?
They can enforce the 30, yeah.
Can they enforce the 30?
It's below 30 that becomes sketchier, yeah. But there does need to be adequate signage for that too. So right now, there's just the signs that the.
Yeah, just coming into
Yeah.
town, and if you don't pay attention coming into town, you'll never pay attention.
So that could be something to consider, is improving signage for that. And so people will turn off the highway, they hit a 30 or 40 kilometer sign. Public transit improvements. So we know it has very limited service right now, and would potentially be a way to reduce trips and reliance on private automobiles to get to Nelson or Trail or Castlegar for shopping or medical appointments. Right now, it's not very convenient, but comes at a cost, of course. At least in rural areas, the tax base pays for a very small percentage of the actual cost of delivering transit service.
Number 5, can we get Moti added into that? Because it is a widening of the highway that they're planning on, and this is not Silverton or New Denver that are able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would suggest just taking out the first part up until support and just starting with support.
Yeah,
Support the establishment, yeah.
yeah, that sounds good.
And does it have to say along Slocan Lake?
Well, that's really your only option, because you're coming from New Denver to Silverton.
But
It's not going to be it's not going to be on the lake. It's a widening of the highway is the plan.
that's why I'm concerned about the language along.
So take out along Silverton Lake.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just for pedestrians,
Yeah.
like as an active transportation route.
That leaves it open for it being wherever they can find a way to do it.
Yeah.
I think the implication there, was it meant to be the highway? Because the highway's along Spokane Lake? It could be, interpreted differently, yeah. All right. And parking, will add some takeaways from the parking study in there. If there are any action items, we consider those. Heritage and cultural resources, so maintaining Silverton's unique character. You have any thoughts on that section? There was the inventory of the village's heritage resources as potential.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to get done, because sooner than later, there's confusion on who owns what as it is. So that'd be nice when that's done.
Okay. Parks and recreation and community facilities. So generally it's talking about maintaining the facilities that we already have and trying to improve them as funding permits.
Most of mine are just comments. It's really just comments.
Yeah, certainly for not only the benefit of tourists and visitors, but residents, of course, actually come first. That the services should be there for them.
Okay. 12-10 options for rehabilitation or replacement of the ice rink. Whoever considered replacing the ice rink.
Well, it might come to that, when the building's gonna fall down. The building needs some help.
Only because it's coming, it needs to be come down.
Building is, it needs.
Is that bad?
Work.
So why are we considering replacing it? Why don't we just fix it up? Or is it that bad? And is it beyond fixing
It
it?
would need public works to go over and have a good look at it, see what needs to be done. This also needs to be something we work on the Arena Society would be with. They hold property. I don't know if they still hold it or if they just sold it, but they, way back when, history, when they had the arena in New Denver.
Yeah.
It burnt down. They got an insurance claim. They got money from that. From that money, they bought into a piece of property with Slow Camp. They were gonna move the arena down there at one point. Something fell apart there. Spokane's slowly been subdividing the property and selling it off. I would imagine the Arena Society is gonna get some money back from all of that. Maybe it's time to start to talk with them to figure out what we can do to enhance our arena. It is the Arena Society that manages it, so I think they should be involved in the conversation. What?
I hate to lose it.
Oh, yeah,
matter what.
and I don't think that's what anybody wants. We're not getting rid of it. It says here that we're looking for options to replace or rehab it.
Please.
Where was the rink in New Denver that burned down?
Where the Osprey is just about
Across the street.
more where the
Where the
garbage
recycling
is, yeah.
Remember sneaking in skiing for free when you used to clean the ice?
There were a few people got in there.
We got it. Well, you got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, next section, development permits, which I've been saying all along. We'll get to the EPAs and here we are.
Just before we do that, should we get a resolution to
Extend
extend
the meeting?
5 minutes before the end?
Thank you. Okay.
All right, so there are three classes of BPA suggested in the draft. We have the core heritage corridor along Highway 6 for the commercial area to retain Silverton's unique heritage look and style. The lakefront or / riparian BPA, which will be along Slocan Lake and Silverton Creek for protection. The map in the OCP may not represent exactly where we end up as far as the properties that will be included. The map behind the mayor actually shows a different alternative, which is really preferential. You'll see the thinner buffer, like the orange along the lake there, that's 10 meters. And yeah, the yellow along the river is 10 meters. And then the blue or the green is 30 meters from the river. So you can see the difference between the distances there. The province likes to see 30 meters protected for riparian areas, but as we know in Silverton, the lake shore and the creek are already disturbed ecosystems that have been developed and changed over time. So there's not a lot of natural heritage to protect there. But it would be nice to encourage some rehabilitation, or more vegetation, and importantly, to look at any hazards. So where there's steep slopes, risk of erosion and that kind of thing. The DPA doesn't necessarily prohibit development within its boundaries, but what it does is it makes the landowner go through a couple more hoops, so that there will be a look at the environment. So is the proposed development going to be environmentally sensitive, and making sure that any hazards are mitigated. So there can be development, say another option would be to have a 10-meter setback where development is restricted and a 30-meter setback where we look at the environment and hazards, and allow therefore development to occur from that 10 to 30-meter setback. So there's a few options there to look at. Where there's a risk of erosion or steep slope, you would want to require a geotechnical report if somebody was building a house or some kind of structure in that area. That can be part of the building permit approval process, so that they would have to hire an engineer to make sure that the structure isn't going to fall into the creek at some point. And then the environmental side, of course, would be looking at, is there anything sensitive in that area, and what measures could the property owner take to improve the environment, such as if there's trees and vegetation out, maybe they can plant new ones somewhere else on the property to offset that. Those are the kind of things to consider there for the lakefront and riparian protection.
This isn't strictly streamside riparian, but I should come in and talk to you at some point to find out what's happening with the Silverton transport property, because there had been some discussion a while back about making some arrangements with them.
So yeah, I am still working on a temporary license application proposal that will come back to council consideration. Yeah.
I just wanted to say quick something on the lake, on this one, for council to really look at this, because the 30 does go through a number of properties and it will drastically affect certain properties.
Including like our sand shed and our public works
Yeah.
would not be allowed under the 30.
Well, it's not that necessarily would not be allowed, because it just means that you need to get an environmental and geotechnical assessment to make sure it will be compatible. So it's just a couple of additional steps that are needed to make sure that the development is going to be compatible with the environment. We do have something similar in Caslow, a 30-meter setback, and 30 meters is also recognized on the Caslow side, the Cooney Lake Partnership, which the Tanaha are involved with, and so the village implemented the 30-meter setback from the lake as part of that. And again, you can You can build a dock, you can build outbuildings and that kind of thing within that setback, just making sure that it's being done sensibly to the environment. So all kinds of things to be considered. And we don't have to answer all those questions in the OCP. Those can also be put into the zoning bylaw. And you don't even have to implement the DPA necessarily. If the OCP says that you can do a DPA, we can always leave it until later on to have more consultation on what people want to see in it. But if you have it in the OCP, it then allows council to say, okay, we're going to do this, the DPA, without having to go back and amend your OCP. And you can have a separate bylaw that deals with DPAs or incorporate it into this. So there's a whole bunch of different options for council to consider. Just want to feel comfortable that if we put some language in the OCP here, it's not suddenly everything is clamped down and nobody can do anything in that. Oh, actually, that's a map on the printer. Oh, that's might be a little easier to see than that's on the wall because it has the airport in it too. So we can put that up and look at it. But we'll just have a look at the other TPAs while we're waiting for that. The commercial corridor. So this is whenever there would be a development of a building structure along the highway corridor that the village would have a chance to have a look at it. Yeah, so
So this is kind of like a blending
yes.
of those two maps.
Oh, so you can
Which will
actually
make
see
you
how
a
it's
little bit
done.
easier
Okay, yeah,
for
yeah.
you guys to see. So we can send copies of this to
Yeah.
everybody so that you
Yes,
can
please.
take a good look through. But also we'll have this big one here if anybody
Okay.
wants to look in large format on paper rather than on a screen. So this was great because I asked Ian for this at about 6:30 today.
Good work.
And yeah, so it's great. We've got the plotter working and we were able to just make this happen for you guys. So,
Cool.
yeah, I think that taking a look at this and then maybe going for a walkabout through town
Yeah.
might be a good probably
Yeah.
really help everybody understand what is being agreed to and
who it's gonna, like, really,
Yeah,
we got a lot of houses here that it's gonna.
along the lake there, that goes into my property chunk when you're looking at 90 feet. That's from high water mark, is it, or from? Yeah, but well, yeah, that's from high water mark, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's, a big chunk of mine in there too.
yeah, and what are the impacts on the campground and, you know, so there's some questions about like risk tolerance and what council wants to see in those locations, but we definitely have municipal assets that could be affected by these decisions, and so
We need to
That's-
think about that before.
yeah, so.
Mhm.
I'll just put this in here for now.
A portion of my shop is covered in that, but it's already there.
It's
We have-
already there,
We have
yes.
no plans on doing anything else.
Yeah,
So there's
it's not
no
like it
need
has to be
for-
removed or anything. Yeah, and you could still even apply to have an addition built if you wanted to.
Yeah,
It would just mean you have to prove that it's not gonna fall.
actually, the land goes across the creek. Silverton crosses our land.
Yep.
But there's no plans to do anything else, so we shouldn't be alarmed by.
Yep.
So it just is what it is
Mhm.
historically.
Unless you do major renovation and then you fall into it.
Yeah, I see a portion of it is cut through there. But yeah, okay.
Yeah, if you have any questions, you can always follow up with email as well.
Yeah.
We'll do our best to answer that. On the downtown court, we have some specific guidelines in there and things like building height and that kind of thing have been brought up, and those are probably better placed in the zoning bylaw, any specific regulations. So want to keep things very general in the OCP.
So a couple of things on 13.2.3, exterior appearance of buildings. Exterior colors should be based on the historical true colors palette. Which one?
Yeah. Okay. You'll hear away which year.
The latest pink and blue and yellow.
Yeah, we want to include that as a schedule in the OCP.
Because I did a quick lookup on that and I came up with like 5 with NBC. I mean, that was just on the first page of the
Mhm.
search. So,
Yeah, both New Denver and Caslo have development guidelines that were prepared by Bob Inwood
yeah.
at the same time. Like they are copy and paste. And I know that Silverton had some work done by him in the 90s as well. He did a bit of like a downtown beautification sort of little booklet that I found. And with that same sort of theme, same kind of thing. So if you're looking for examples, I would suggest Caslo and New Denver are very, very similar. Take a look at that and see if is that applicable to Silverton, or do you want to leave it a little bit more open? And again, those decisions don't have to be made in the OCP. The OCP can just say, we want some rules for the commercial core.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Well,
And they just be hashed out.
I mean, I actually looked up the historical true color palette. It's quite interesting. Outdoor storage, screening the storage areas, well, that's pretty much ignored in many places. And the parking and loading areas, owners will be encouraged to pay parking areas on the streets adjacent to property being developed. There would have to be a clause in there saying in conjunction with village
Oh, yeah.
oversight, because we don't want someone, paving over a dry well.
Where do you see that?
Number 5, 13.2.3.
13.2.3, font number 5, parking and loading areas.
It also gets into industry transportation approval as well.
Yeah.
If it is currently a gravel boulevard, then you have to get a ministry permit to be able to pave there anyway.
Yeah.
So again, another thing we probably want to put into
Into zoning, okay.
or a separate document and keep this more general. So we don't tie our hands on that.
Yeah, exactly. But do take a look at these specifics, and this is your chance to pre-think about it before we get it to you in zoning, and then you can, well, either if everybody says don't include it, we won't, but giving some examples of scenarios to think about, and some examples of what you can control. Places where you want to.
The parking and loading areas and paving seems to be counter to, it just creates more impermeable surface, right? And potentially a lot more impermeable surface, which is not necessarily a good thing. So there's a contradiction there. And so I wonder if we should say owners will be encouraged to pave parking areas on streets and so on.
Well, and I mean, you can say owners will be encouraged to use permeable paving when providing on-street parking. Like there are a whole bunch of different shapes that could take. And I agree that it does raise some questions about how the various pieces of this interact, because on the one hand we have some climate change stuff, we've been talking about stormwater management, and then on the other hand,
pave paradise.
Yeah. And so again, there are solutions to that. You can have both, but you have to be quite specific about what you're going to ask.
So then further to that, should we do something about the wording of 5?
Well, I think what we're saying is that really all of this is probably coming out and is going to live in zoning, because that's where it's easier to adjust if you realize that you missed something or made an error and need to change.
Sure.
And so really all that we're doing at the end of the day, all that's going to be in the OCP is potentially just identifying these locations, saying that they exist, and then the detail can happen in the zoning bylaw. But since we have this information, we didn't pull it out because we're going to ask you about it eventually. And so we figured at least leaving it in, we're getting the feedback sooner rather than later.
Yes, and put some thought into how approvals of this would happen as well. So would each of these applications come to council to decide if it has a good heritage appearance? Or would you want to have a heritage design committee do it? Or would you like to delegate a certain aspect of it to staff? So that's an important consideration too. We also want to have a process that isn't going to be too onerous or too time consuming for the applicant, so they can get their building permit timely paid as well. Right. So we talked a fair bit about the lakeshore and riparian protection. And again, we'll probably be taking some items out of this and putting it into zoning. But the idea is to make sure that we have the basis for it here in this document. So if there's any thoughts on that one? See, no. And then the wildfire risk reduction.
Oh, no,
Hmm?
sorry. Under 13.3.2 special conditions and 13.3.3 guidelines, it stipulates that buildings will not exceed 2 stories. 2 stories is a pretty general description of a height. And previously it was a height restriction of 23 feet from median grade. And I would like to see a hard number retained.
Has it always been 2 stories? Just because I'm wondering, because this,
23 feet.
because there's a bunch of the subdivisions that are over 2 stories.
We don't save them if they're burning.
Yeah, that is.
That's expensive.
Are they more than 2 stories above the general grade?
Yeah.
They're more than 2 stories from the lake, but are they above?
Yeah.
And we don't have the same kind of control of the strata.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It rolls up there.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't want to see a 40-foot tall 2-story house.
Yeah, it was, Lake Shore buildings must not be over 33 feet, but again, there's no saying how that's measured. Right, so there are some things that, because Ian and I have had the pleasure of doing plan checks and trying to work with rules like this for a while,
Yeah.
we're like, yeah, you need to do more than that.
Yeah.
That's
And,
not very clear.
you know, I would like to see it.
And how do you measure height of your building?
Yeah.
You measure it to halfway up the, how do you do it for this type of roof? How do you do it for a flat roof? How do you do it for?
Yeah, I would like to see it kept as low as we can for those lakeshore buildings, because in so many jurisdictions are running into that issue of they put up a really tall building and now I can't see the lake, and so I'm gonna build higher. So nip it in the bud, so to speak.
There was a lady at the town hall, the open house meeting, that was a little concerned that there's a property for sale in front of her, and what happens if they build a 5-story in front of me? What do I do? I said, yeah, talk to the CAO. I said, I don't think we'll allow it, but you talk to her, not me.
Yeah,
But the 2-story or whatever you go with, in a case like us, we've got a basement that is sort of half buried, half in like, but the 2 stories would start on top of that, would it
Well, but
not?
that's the question, is that when we get to the zoning bylaw, we want clarity around that. Where are we gonna start that? Where do we put the tape measure? Is
Yeah,
yeah,
the average grade? What about for houses that are on a hillside? Like
yeah.
my house in New Denver is very, very tall. If you measure from the one side to the top, but if you measure from the other side, it is not.
Nope.
yeah,
So it's those sort of like edge
Yeah.
cases that.
yeah, and I really want us to take a
And-
critical look at those things.
And I think that the big limiter for us on building height is fire protection.
Yep.
Because the trucks are only able to go, we don't have a ladder truck in this area. And I don't see anybody offering the $1 million that it's gonna cost to get a ladder truck.
Come on, Brian.
So,
Yeah, right.
so that sort of,
I'm with Leah.
it limits
2
the
stories.
Yeah.
allowable height of buildings in the community.
Yeah.
For reasons other than visuals and things like that, so,
Mhm.
Right, wildfire EPA. And we'll be aiming this at more of an educational public awareness kind of thing. And we'll make it more general in this document, more specifics elsewhere.
That works for me, because I'm not in favor of telling people what trees or plants they can plant on.
All right. Yeah, and so that's something to consider too. Like, if you want it up totally out of there, that's something that council can vote on or give instruction on. And we'll bring it back.
I would love to actually, I know it's probably too late in this, but I would love to get the public's input. I know they were the ones that said they wanted it, but now that they know that this is what it's gonna come to, do you still want it?
yeah.
Because I can almost guarantee I will probably go 75% will go, oh, well, no, that's not what I meant.
Yeah, well, everybody else should, but not me.
Yeah. Yeah, we get that all the time. Other people, not me.
So
Yeah.
Tanya, are you concerned that because our OCP will have it on paper saying wildfire protection, even if like we don't mandate anything outside of education, insurance companies will still
Yep.
up the price?
Yep.
As if you were to change.
Yeah, because it
residential
says in your
to commercial, go
OCP
up.
that you're supposed to be doing this, this, and this.
I see, yeah.
I don't think so. And I think that given the changes to the Fire Smart funding, we want as much flexibility around this as possible, because right now we're able to offer free assessments to
Mhm.
people. But
Yeah.
In 2 years, it might not be.
yeah, so we want to
Be flexible.
be pretty flexible, and I think that's a really good reason for putting it in the zoning. So that if all of a sudden we've created a bar that is impossible to reach, we can change it.
And yeah, the rest is sort of housekeeping stuff. So we have up to the bylaws being implemented. These sections are going to be completed shortly. Phasing and financing. So if there's any big projects that have been identified, then we incorporate that in here. So long-term financial reductions. Nothing's really on the radar at this point. We're not doing infrastructure projects.
No, we're focused more on maintenance and repair than we are on new developments. So I think that that's gonna make this section a lot easier.
All right, and just repeat of some of the maps and tables, which will get updated as well. And that's it.
I can go have supper?
Now, hold on, we're not doing the meeting yet. Any further comments or questions from council?
I think that you've come a long way. You've done a lot of work. And I really appreciate it. Having been involved in the 2010 OCP committee, I have some idea of how daunting it can be. You've brought great expertise, great skills. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to echo that too. Thank you very much. This was first brought to the table in 2019, so I'm really happy to see it like this moving. Okay,
Real people, real progress.
so now we're up to public input period. Does anybody online have any comments or questions?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead, Judith.
Okay, I have examined the OCP draft plan, and I'm assuming that riparian areas refer to the creek bed as
Okay.
well as the lake shore, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, I just want to point out that there's been considerable undercutting along the north side that was never diked. And there is some sloughing going on the surface along the path. I just wanted to make council aware of that, and hopefully it can be addressed in some way. I recognize that fisheries and oceans, that it's a multi-level jurisdiction, I assume.
It is on our radar, Judith, and it is on our work plan. We did have a dike plan that came to us a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, it wasn't looking at the area that we were wanting it to, so now we have brought it back to staff and it is back on the work plan. We're well aware of that area sloughing and we're gonna deal with it.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to put it on everybody's radar. If you walk along the north side pathway, it's quite visible and possibly dangerous.
Thank you very much, Judith.
But thanks for all your hard work, everyone.
Thanks, Judith.
Thank you.
Anybody else online would like to comment? Seeing no further, I will call for a motion to adjourn. Seconded by. All in favor?
Yeah, good job on the OCP.
That's very good, folks. Thanks a lot.